So, the last couple days have been productive regarding the reinstalling this engine, and I'm hoping to make a little bit more progress today off work. So, let's take a look at what we can do next. After I wrapped up the video, last video, I did route the starter cable down. Also, I found this oil line, which actually goes on the back of the pan, and it's got a spacer. So with crush rings on all three sides, crush ring on either side of the spacer, and then the special banjo bolt goes there. I got the oil temperature sensor down to the correct opening for it and routed it all the way up around the bell housing and everything. So all that's in place. So one of the things I wanted to mention is you've got your shift rod, which you have to pull forward, ouch, out of the, it connects through the, this bell housing on the transaxle, and there's a plastic tube it passes through. Anyway, you have to push it forward. So once you get the exhaust, if you had the exhaust in here, you wouldn't have much access to it. So I'm almost thinking I want to do the transaxle before I do the exhaust, just because it's easier to kind of manipulate. You can barely see it up there. I don't know. It's tough either way. But bottom line, you have to be able to kind of grab a hold of it and push it through the plastic tube on the transaxle and all that stuff. Let's see if we can see the end of it. Yeah, there it is right there. So let me evaluate that. This would be a great time to put the transaxle back in and at least accomplish that before I put the exhaust in. Alrighty, we got the transaxle on the jack. And of course, this is the tube I was referring to. I think I might put a little penetrating oil on this, because sometimes they can be trouble trying to get them to slide. And then you want to make sure your coupler for your shaft is on there as well. So yeah, should be ready to stick this back in. I located the bolts and away we go. Okay, I got 3 of the transaxle bell housing, I call it, bolts started. Still got a pretty good gap before the transmission mounts will line up. Those, they're basically just big body screws that go in there. So I'm just going to give it a little lift from the back, get it up in there a little bit further. Well, let's try it with the jack. It might suck it up in there. Oh yeah, there she goes. Okay, we can do that now. So I've got the transmission suspended, still loose, but I'm going to go ahead and slide that plastic tube and get that rod through the plastic tube and hopefully start it onto the shift mechanism back here. So I got the plastic tube through both sides, and you can see the shift rod is started into it. Now it's just a matter of kind of fishing it through. You got a little bit of space to work there. You get a pair of vice grips or something up in there and kind of push it through. And then the whole idea is to get it to mate up with that linkage there. See if I can expose that. There is a dimple on the shift mechanism that will correspond with a special bolt with a tapered tip that goes in that dimple. All right, so we got that done, and then you just pull that rubber boot, if you still have one, over that to cover it. And there's actually a hole drilled through the head of that. It's a 13mm bolt head. I imagine Porsche wanted some safety wire on there. I'm not going to do that. So let's see, next thing is to slide this coupler over the splines to join the two shafts together. And there's some big long Allen screws that go into that coupler. Okay, note that the splines have a notch in them. So that coupler screw has to pass through the notch. I think it's on both ends. I'd have to spin it around to see this end. But yeah, you won't be able to get the screw through unless the notch, the coupler's slid in at exactly the right spot. So to get the first screw in, caps bolt, whatever you want to call it, in that coupler on the torque tube end, it's got to be aligned really well with this opening. And if it isn't, guess what? Because your clutch isn't done, you're going to have to turn the crank. If you could engage the clutch, you could free spool it. But it's critical this be lined up just right, or else you won't be able to get the bolt in. This other end is a lot more forgiving. It's a lot bigger space to work in, but I'm still going to have to spin it over to because the two bolts are counter opposed to one another. So I've never encountered this, but with the bolt in the shaft end of the coupler and nestled into the groove, this one is not aligning. It is about a 1/4 inch short of the groove. Now, the only thing I can come up with, the reason that's happening, one, the shaft itself has play inside the torque tube, and for some reason is too far into the clutch, but that would be the needle bearing, pilot bearing, and everything. So I've discounted that. The other is the engine is too far forward, which, look at this motor mount. So I've got a good 1/2 inch of play to push the engine to the rear of the car. Let's see what I have on this side. It's already all the way back. So one way or another, I need to figure out a way to loosen that and give the whole engine and drivetrain a nudge to the rear of the car. All right, well, I got it. Eventually, it just required, I did loosen up the motor mount, and it shifted backwards some. And then also I was taking a bar and prying on the flange, kicking it to the back while this bolt was tight. So if there's any play in the shaft, it would pull those two spline ends together. I kind of thought I was going to have problems when I noted that the two splined ends weren't close together. They're like, 3/8 of an inch apart. Usually they're really close together. So that shaft in the torque tube's probably got some play. But It's a, 50-year-old car. What do you expect? Alrighty, next heat shield in place. Just a couple of body screws. And then there's a cross member that goes from here to here. Should go above the heat shielding. So I don't need to put that on next. Okay, so that's in place. And then you actually have a couple more of those body screws, sheet metal screws that hold this guy to the cross member. Next to be the big long shield that goes about 2 or 3 foot. Okay, that's the last shield in place. So I guess I'm ready to put this these exhaust pipes in. What the heck? Okay, I've got the pipe that goes from the wastegate to the exhaust pipe on there loosely. And next I'll put the long pipe that comes out of the output of the turbo on there. And yeah, that smaller one has to sleeve into there.